Hey guys, Callum here and welcome back to the channel, and today we are going to be talking about Doctor Who Series 11 Episode 6, The Demons of Punjabi. Oh god, where to start with this? Big shout out to Sega Akinola for this episode. His score this episode was absolutely breathtaking. Music in Doctor Who is an important thing. Murray Gold is probably one of the best composers for the show, even though he was the only real proper composer, especially in the modern era. And some of his scores are absolutely fantastic. But Sega Akinola for this episode specifically, in the setting and just the way that it was so emotional and it felt right with me, it is so satisfying to hear specifically that how just much the music can engage you in a story, and Sega Akinola did that to perfection in this episode. Now let's talk about the episode itself. I was not expecting to love this episode more than I did. I was expecting to think that because this is the first non-Chris Chibnall written episode of Doctor Who in this series, I was expecting to like it compared to the last 2 weeks, which have been very, very poor episodes of Doctor Who. This was a pleasant hour of television. This story is just, I just wasn't expecting to love it as much as I did, because I love this episode. I absolutely love it. I don't know what it was about it that just hit me right here in my heart. I don't want to get on emotional stuff, but it just felt so right. The characters that were written and the writing for this episode was spot on. It just felt like, compared to the last few weeks, it had breathing space. It was fluid. It felt incredibly well paced. I just felt that I just wanted it to keep going, and I loved it about that. I think the writing for all the characters, for the Doctor, for Graham, Ryan, Yaz especially, and then you got all the other characters that I can't remember on the top of my head because of it. They were difficult names to remember, but the characters that it was all fantastically written. I think the two brothers, while I don't think their expressions were fantastic for the actors, I still felt what the intention of the scenes between them were. In the last scene where they are in the field and the brother's trying to convince this other brother to not do this, to not send these men out to kill his now wife. It's just, you can just see it was just incredibly well acted, I think. I don't know what it was. It just, you felt it. This is what I felt like that Rosa tried to do in a lot of ways, because they're quite similar things. They're very similar because it deals with a real life issue in a similar vein. But I felt like this was handled so much better. I just felt, it's just something about this episode, man, was just so breathtaking. I loved almost every second of it, and I just felt that this was the character development that Yasmin desperately needed, and I'm so glad that it was this episode that we got that. So glad. That scene with Graham and Yasmin talking about living in the moment, living with yourself right now, is a fantastic scene, and Bradley Walsh performs it extremely well. There's nothing really to say. Bradley Walsh is the best thing about this series, hands down. The writing for everybody, the Doctor especially. I loved the Doctor in this episode. She was intimidating. She was focused. She had a purpose. She just felt as if, I don't know how to describe it. It's just, when it comes down to it, I don't know how to describe this episode, but in a good way. because it just hit me with all the emotions that I wanted to feel. It hit me with all the right beats of the story that I wanted to see. And I just think that this is going to be one of my favourite episodes of the series. The actual premise of this episode, it gets it instantly went from the get-go. It just feels so much more fresher than all of Chibnall's episode. The writing doesn't feel hoaxy. It all just feels natural. It is allowing breathing space between each line. The direction also was fantastic. No unnecessary close-ups. It just felt free. It felt fluid. It just all felt natural. I think it's the most important thing, and it suited this style and this story. I think this is probably my favourite episode of the series so far. I don't know how other people are reacting to it. I'll be shocked if people don't at least like this episode. I think the assassins, they looked a lot like Power Ranger villains, which was very odd. Set design was great though. Obviously there's no real villain in this story. Probably the thugs were probably the villain, but they didn't come up until the last couple of minutes, but they're hinted at throughout the episode. But I don't think this story didn't really need a villain. This story was trying to tell a story about how we can all, everyone is welcomed and there isn't a difference. It's pretty much, it's like Rosa, but I just felt like that this was handled better and executed better in so many ways. And really the only real negative I have about it is probably that maybe it drags on a bit too much, maybe, but and there were a few lines that I wasn't keen on. I think probably from the Doctor and stuff. Ryan felt like a backseat, but he kind of had to be because this is a very Yasmin episode. The Doctor, I think Jodie's performance was fantastic. The way when he's getting held at gunpoint basically, but the way she just tries to connect with this person and just isn't getting through to him, but she understands what kind of thing he's going through and stuff. It just felt so natural and better than anything else that Chibnall has written so far. I just loved this episode, and I think I need to watch it again to really hone down my thoughts on it, because obviously my initial reaction, I'm always like, I don't know how to really talk about it, but I know for a fact that this episode I love. The rating I'm going to give this episode is an 8 out of 10 because obviously initial, I could end up giving this a 9 or maybe just a bit below, but initial reaction is that I loved this episode of Doctor Who. It was a fantastic ride from start to finish. It didn't feel like I didn't feel bored at any point. I was engaged. The score was fantastic. The setting, visually was fantastic. The direction was great. And performances all round was fantastic. Writing was on point. Just nothing really wrong with this episode. I will have to watch it again to see if there's anything I can spot that I really wasn't a fan of, because obviously if I loved this episode it would be in the 9s, but I obviously want to watch this again and then in the summary I will give my final ranking. But right now this is 100% an 8 out of 10. This is a very odd review because I don't think I've ever actually explained in detail what I really loved about this episode, or I didn't explain in detail what I wasn't really keen on this episode. I just loved it. It was just an hour of television that I was thankful to watch and pleased to watch. It's as simple as that. So, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please leave a like and tell me what you liked about this episode. What didn't you like about this episode? I'd love to hear all opinions. Other than that, I will see you next week for Blam. That's a weird title. See you then.